Sakshi TV special immigration show with attorney Ms. Prashanthi Reddy from the law offices of Prashanthi Reddy PLLC. Ms. Prashanthi needs no introduction, but if you need consultation, please log on to reddyesq.com for contact information. And when you connect with them, do not forget to mention Sakshi TV. From the beginning, ReddyESQ.com has put a wealth of free information and online tools in the hands of the immigrant community and for the benefit of US employers. The ReddyESQ.com site provides you with latest and cutting-edge information on US immigration law and policies explained in terms you don't have to be a lawyer to understand. Today's topic is H1-B and H1-B registration FAQs, H4 processing time updates, and other immigration updates. We will continue the knowledge session along with the news updates on latest immigration, followed by Q&A. Before we get into the topic, you can call us on the numbers on the screen for questions related to immigration and also ask for tips. Hi, Ms. Reddy, how are you doing?
Hi, Tony. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So, Ms. Reddy, looks like we have a lot to cover today, but would you want to start off with the updates first?
Yes.
Could you tell our audience what the latest updates are?
Yes, let's do that. I wanted to start off with the notification that we got from USCIS that they are extending the time limits given to respond for RFEs and appeals, NOIDs, everything that has a time limit, they're extending that. So just to give a little bit of background, what has happened is during COVID, they have been extending the time. So if there is a certain time on an RFE, a request for further evidence, right? If USCIS sends a request for further evidence, they usually give a certain deadline to respond by. So now they're automatically extending that deadline by 60 days. And the reasons for this is due to continuing impact of COVID. So they have further extended this 60 days grace on top of the deadline period to March 23rd, 2023. So they're extending it every 3 months at a time. This might be the final extension. We don't know. We have to wait and see. But these extensions have been extremely useful for our clients, because often, the petitioners are abroad and can't travel back, or the beneficiaries are abroad and can't travel back, and so can't respond on time, or documents sometimes take a long time if they have to be gotten from government agencies, etc. So it's been very useful to have this extended time. So the additional 60 days grace to respond is for request for evidence, notice of intent to deny or revoke, notice to terminate, even for EB5 cases, this extension is there. So it's great to continue to have this kind of extension. Also it's 90 days if you're filing an appeal to 90B. All appeals will continue to have a 90-day period to file, which is great also. But this will end March 23rd, 2023. So let's not take it for granted that it'll be there forever, and just keep track of the date to respond on your request for further evidence. Another important update and the highlight really for this for today's topic, today's session, is the H4 and H4 EAD processing times. So just to give some background, all those people that have spouses who have I-140s approved are allowed to get a H4 EAD, meaning if they're on a H4, they can also get employment authorization. So they have to file an I-765 or EAD document. So H4 EADs have been immensely useful for families because it allows a second income, number one, and number two, H4 EADs are more flexible than H1s because you can actually start your own business. You're not, or you can work for 2 companies or 3 companies. So you're not restricted to working for that company that has filed, the H1-B, unlike the H1-B or the L1. So what happened then is during the Trump era, they started an additional requirement that all H4s and other cases as well, B2s, they require biometrics. They have started requiring biometrics for those cases, which means that they have to go get their fingerprints and photograph taken, and then there's a security check, as a result of which the processing times for these cases started getting delayed. And at one point, H4s, H4 EADs were taking more than 12 to 16 months to process. So as a result of these delayed processing times, there was a lawsuit filed, Edakunni versus Mayorkas. And as a result of that, the USCIS has come to a settlement, signed a settlement agreement with the plaintiffs, and they have agreed to go back to their old way of approving the H4s along with the H1s. So if both H4 and H1 is filed together, previously they would approve them together. So you'd get the H4 approval and H1 approval together in the mail. But with the requirement for biometrics, that process stopped, and then the H4s and H4 EADs were taking a long time. So now they've agreed to again bundle them up together and approve H4s, L2s, H4 EADs together, which means that this is a huge gain for H4 EAD people, because what was happening is because of the delays in the processing times, they were losing their jobs, losing their businesses. So it really, even though you were giving them a benefit, it wasn't an effective benefit. But now with them processing both H1s and H4s at the same time, you're looking at processing times of a few months now, and it can go down to even 30 days. If the H1 is filed premium processing, then the H4 will also get approved, and the H4 EAD also will get approved in 30 days. So even though there's no separate EAD as yet, there's no separate premium processing as yet for H4 EADs, this is as good as, as it gets. We're hoping that premium processing will, they did announce that later on in the year, there will be premium processing for EADs as well. But as of now, this is what we have, and we're happy for it. But just one thing to remember is that the H4 EAD has to be filed along with the H1 to get the benefit of this, faster processing time. But otherwise, if you file by themselves, the H4 EAD is still taking a long time, but H4s are the processing time has greatly improved last year and this year. So it's not that bad, but EADs are still taking a long time. Moving on to our next update. Yesterday, this is very new. So what has happened is there has been a bill that has been introduced in the House, and basically the bill says that those people who have been detained by CBP. So when you're entering into the country, whether you're on a H1 or an F1 or you're a visitor, you have to go through inspection, right, at the airport. So that's CBP. So when you go for inspection at the airport, sometimes they detain you, sometimes they stop you from coming in, and they question you. And sometimes that questioning can last for several hours, and they don't treat you very well. They don't sometimes give you food and water, medical attention, etc. So the bill basically says that these people should have right to counsel, meaning that they should be able to call their lawyers or call their employers or friends or relatives or whoever can give them that information that they need. So oftentimes officers will summarily refuse entry or issue orders of removal even without giving the person, the applicant, enough time to gather additional documentation that may be needed. And sometimes there's things are not done fairly, they're unjust. They stop people from coming in for invalid reasons. Sometimes it's racial, unfortunately, or some other prejudice. So this can all stop if there is representation allowed at the port of entry, and that's what the bill is about. A similar bill is also going to be introduced in the Senate as well, so both House and Senate. This is actually being reintroduced, so it was introduced earlier but didn't go anywhere because they didn't take a vote on it. So let's see what happens this time. But it'll be a huge improvement. Recently I've heard a lot of students going on vacation back to India and then not being able to come back even though they're in the middle of their semester because the officers found some so-called incriminating evidence on their social media or on their phones or emails. And so they summarily kind of issues order of removal. Sometimes they even put in a 5-year bar, so which basically means that they can't come back for the next 5 years unless they file a waiver, which is hard to do. So these things can be avoided or controlled to a certain extent to make sure that only those people can be refused entry for valid reasons, right? So that's an important bill if it is passed. The other information that I wanted to give you that the visa waiver processing also has been extended. So as we all know that in an effort to reduce the visa wait times, and because there were so many processing backlogs at the consulate because of the pandemic, the Department of State had a visa waiver program, which means that if you previously had a visa, you didn't have to go for an interview again. You could just use the Dropbox, and then you could, get a waiver and get a visa without having to go in person. And this, for the visa waiver, there's dates are readily available because nobody has to actually see them. And they're processing them pretty smoothly. So they've extended that date because it is only temporary.
Ms. Reddy, I'm really sorry to cut you in between, but
Sure.
we have a caller waiting. Okay. Hi, welcome to the show. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi, welcome to the show. Okay, can I know your name, please?
Yeah, hi, this is Nandu.
Okay, hi, Chandu. Welcome to the show. You can ask Ms. Reddy your question directly.
Yeah, okay. My question is, where can I file I-765 for receiving a H4 EAD?
You can file it along with the H1 that you're filing. So if your spouse is filing a H1, then you file the H4 EAD along with the H1.
I hope that answered your question. Thank you for calling, Chandu. Are you there with us? Right. I think you left the chat. So, thank you for calling, Chandu. Yeah. Please, Ms. Reddy, go on. You were saying.
So I was just talking about the visa waiver program, and I'm happy that the waiver we have that extended until the end of December. So that is great news. In addition to that, let's see. Sorry, I'm having some issues with my.
But Ms. Reddy, how does that affect the immigrant culture over there? I mean, does that mean that the US is going to be accommodating more immigrants this year or not? Because there are quite a lot of personal experiences that a lot of my friends have had too, due to RFEs when they've gone to their home country, when they've gone to India on a vacation or something, they weren't able to come back because of the social media evidence that actually happened to one of my close friends. And
right.
That's actually becoming quite common.
Right. So that's why it's important that, we were discussing the previous update with reference to that bill that was introduced. Unless there's legislative change, right now there is no chance of getting representation at the CBP. So you're alone with the officer. Oftentimes they intimidate you, and they'll say they'll have you arrested, detained unless you accept something, whether it's true or false, right? So they kind of force an acceptance out of you. That's what happens sometimes. So that can be avoided if there's representation, or you're allowed to make a phone call, at least to your attorney, to find out, to get information as to what to do, so you can get advice over the phone at least. So that can, I think, help the situation with, with reference to some of these cases where people are forced to go back. The visa waiver also is a good thing because it's extended until December 31st of this year. So let's hope it gets extended further. But this has been beneficial because it's really speeded along the processing times for visa interviews. So people are able to get slots at least for, a Dropbox, even though the slots for in-person interview are still a few months away, but it's beneficial.
Right. So with that, Ms. Reddy, we have some FAQs that have been asked. Can we move on to those?
Yes, sure.
Right. So the first question that we got is, how does the USCIS determine if an H1-B petition is subject to cap?
Right. So these the questions that I guess you're asking is about the H1B cap, and very relevant for what's going to be happening soon, where the cap season is coming up starting March 1st. My registrations will start. They close on March 17th, and we'll be filing a lot of H1B cap petitions. This is your chance to file. If you have never filed a H1 before, this is the only time that you can file during the year. Otherwise, you'll have to wait for next year. So how does one decide? If you've never been on a H1B before, then you have a cap. So if you're a new H1, there's a cap of 65,000 if you have a bachelor's degree, or there's a cap of 20,000 for an advanced degree. So total of 85,000 is your cap, is the number of cases, the H1s that can be filed, new H1s that can be filed in a year. So this is, since the demand is much more than the supply, there is a registration process that takes place. So you can electronically register yourself for the lottery. And once they conduct the lottery, then if you get an approval in the lottery, then you're able to go ahead and file your H1B case. So basically, all those people who have never been on a H1 before, they are subject to the H1B cap, because it's all new H1B petitions.
Right. With that, Ms. Reddy, I think we have another caller. Hi, welcome to the show. Could you please tell us your name?
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Hello.
To the show. Yeah, could you please tell us your name? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. My name is Mugda.
Mugda, is it?
Yes.
Welcome to the show, Mugda. You can ask Ms. Reddy your question directly.
So the thing was, I was filing information about the H1 and my system turned off due to power issue. Does that mean my data is saved, or I should create a new application?
So were you trying to do a registration? What were you trying to do?
No, I was trying to do a registration, yes.
So you can't do a registration right now. You have to wait until March 1st to do a registration.
Okay.
So it's too early to do that.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Reddy.
You're welcome. Take care.
Yes.
Thank you for calling, Mugda. So you were saying, Ms. Reddy?
I think we were talking about the FAQs and who is subject to a cap petition and who isn't. So I think we're done with that question.
Right, and when can a person file?
So H1B cap subject petition, also those, including those eligible for the advanced degree exemption, may not be filed unless based on a valid and selected registration. So unless you have registered and the registration has been selected and approved, then you can file. So you may file a H1 6 months ahead of the employment start date. And since the fiscal year is starting on October 1st, you can file once you get approved on August 1st. And you have 90 days to file your petition, so that takes you to the end of June. So starting from April 1st, you can file anytime until June 30th.
Right.
Provided that you have approved registration.
Right. So, Ms. Reddy, but when can a person ensure that they can properly file an H1B object petition?
How to ensure that you properly file your H1B petition? So there are many things that you have to look into to make sure that your H1B petition is filed properly, because if you don't, then it'll come back and you don't know when it'll come back. If it comes back after the June 30th time frame, then you cannot file, you cannot refile. But if it comes back before that, then you'll be able to send it back again. So one pointer is, of course, file as early as you can. So that is basically on April 1st or after April 1st. So just to ensure that even if your case comes back, you'll have time to refile. Sometimes they take a month, sometimes even 2 months to send to reject your application. Make sure you complete all the required sections of the form. The form that you use is the I-129 form. And then there's also a H supplement form and a H1-B data collection form, right? So make sure you fill out all the columns correctly in there, check mark all the boxes that need to be check mark, make sure you sign and you submit the proper forms, you submit the proper filing fee, and also that you use the current version of the form. Don't use an old version. Go to the USCIS website and see which version is the current version and use that. Right? Just don't go to Google and type in I-129 form and start using the first form that comes up, right? Because it'll be rejected if it's not the current form. There are different versions of the I-129 form, and you have to use the most recent one. Make sure you provide a copy of the H1-B registration selection notice that you received from USCIS, which shows proof that your H1-B has been selected. Also, make sure that you enter the corresponding confirmation number from that selection notice on your H supplement, right? On page 13, question 5, you have to enter that number. So make sure you enter that number. Otherwise, USCIS might return the entire petition. Also ensure that any information provided during the registration process matches with your I-129 petition. And if, for example, if the name is not matching, sometimes maybe your address, employer's address is not the same, or you've made some typographical error, or maybe you have moved. So if there's any, maybe the employer's federal ID number was not mentioned correctly in the registration, and so that could be a problem also. So if there is any conflict in the information, make sure you flag it by using a bright colored cover sheet, and you basically inform USCIS that it was a typographical error or whatever the issue was, and you prove to USCIS that this is the correct information that you're giving. So the information on the I-129 is the correct information, and give documentary evidence of that. For example, if your address was a typo, give them a copy of your lease or other address confirmation like your utility bill or your tax return, which has your address on it, to show that the address on the I-129 is correct. Okay. Also make sure each form has an original, it's no longer original signature. You don't need the original signature. Photocopy of the signature is fine, but it has to be dated and signed in the correct place. Don't do it in the wrong place. Make sure you include all your checks and money orders, and the fee calculation is correct. The fee calculation for a H1 is quite complicated, so make sure you have the correct fee mentioned in your check. Make sure you write the check correctly in words and in numbers, and you date the check correctly. If you put an old date, which is over 6 months old, they may not accept it. Also, make sure you, of course, sign your check in the correct place. So all that is important. Otherwise, again, the case will come back because they can't encash that check of yours. Submit all required evidence along with the petition. It's not just the forms. There are other evidence that is required. This will ensure that your H1 gets approved in a timely fashion. Make sure that you put in the LCA, the labor condition application, and make sure that all the information in the LCA properly corresponds with the other information in your forms and the other evidence document that you're providing. For example, if you have a client name on your LCA, that has to be correspond with, say, the purchase order, which has the client name or the client work location. So make sure all that is same. Make sure your LCA is again signed, properly approved. Also, last but not the least, you must file the petition at the correct service center. And for a H1B cap petition, the service center will be mentioned not on the website, which is where one would usually look, but on the registration notice.
Right. And Ms. Reddy, can a person or a petitioner file multiple or duplicative H1B petitions for the same beneficiary?
So petitioners may not file multiple or duplicate H1B petitions for the same beneficiary. This is to ensure, a fair and orderly distribution of the available H1B visas. If one person files 10 times, they're more likely to get picked rather than a person who files one application, right? So USCIS will deny or revoke any multiple or duplicate filings by that particular one employer. But also if the related employers also file for that same applicant, then also they will revoke that H1-B. I just had a case today where the same petitioner for the same beneficiaries, separate petitioners filed for same beneficiaries, and USCIS found that out. And they found out that there was a relationship between the companies, because one of the companies was a vendor to the other company. So there were like 1,000 registrations filed, and they found that at least 300 of the beneficiaries were common in all the registrations. So they sent, after approving the case, they sent a notice of intent to revoke that particular H1. And, they alleged fraud as well, because you're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to collude with other employers and file for the same beneficiary, so that the beneficiary has better chance of getting more chances. But on the other hand, the beneficiary can apply with 5 employers, as long as the employers don't collude together or know about, all these duplicate filings.
Right.
Right. As long it's not even know, they shouldn't collude together. That's all. That's
right. So that's the important point, for it to not collude together.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. So, Ms. Reddy, after all the registration process, where can one mail the H1-B petition?
You have to file your petition with the service center, and that service center, as I said earlier, will be mentioned on the registration select notice, not on the website that we usually go to look for addresses, but the direct filing addresses will be mentioned on the registration notice, and you have to send it there, because they have a way of distributing this. So it's not necessarily geographical. So we just have to follow the filing instructions carefully that are given to us on the registration selection notice and send it to that address.
Right. Right. So with that, Ms. Reddy, we come to the end of the show. But before you sign off, could you please give our audience a golden immigration message for, March and all that's to come?
Right. So just as summary of everything that we have said, just be careful when you're doing registrations, because you get only one chance to file per year. So don't make any errors. Try not to make any typos. If you do, make sure you correct that by flagging it when you're filing the H1. Don't file multiple applications, because then all the applications will get denied. So it's not worth it. Make sure you file with the correct fee and file your H1 correctly to the right address. Send out all the correct forms, sign in the right places, etc.
Right. Thank you for the sound advice, Ms. Reddy. Like always, you've always helped our audience. And it's always a privilege to host you, Ms. Reddy. Thank you so much for being on our show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Tony. Take care.
You too. You're watching Sakshi Live. This is Torani. Thank you.